Hello, you guys. Welcome back, Lighthouse family. I hope you guys are having an amazing weekend and an amazing day. Today, you guys, we're jumping into another story, another testimony, another testifying of God's glory, I could say. Today, we're talking about 5 more things I had to give up to surrender to God, to gain closer to Him, to hear His Spirit, to feel His Spirit on a daily. And one of them, the very first one, is family. I had to really give up family to really follow God. But I'm going to explain more to make you understand. Truthfully, I haven't really seen my family probably about a good 6 years now. I know you'd probably be like, what? In 6 years you haven't really seen your family? Yes, about 6 years I haven't seen my family. And it's not the total of the years I've been in Dallas. It was really when I was still living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I can admit that, yes, I do love my family. Yes, sometimes I do miss being with them, but my family wasn't what's good for me. My family wasn't what was really best for me spiritually. I met my husband around 2018. And when I really met him, I really stopped going around my family as much. Like in 2018, I met him, we started really living together, and that's where I really was most of the time. I would dab probably in and out between the times we was living in Milwaukee, but that's why it was a total of 6 years, because when we met, I really wasn't going around as often as I would. I was like dabbing in and out every probably holiday, every now and then. But honestly, I really wasn't going around as often. So that's why it totals like a total of 6 years of how I haven't really been around my family as much. And then the year of 2022 is when God was calling us to move to Texas. And that's when I really stopped being around them, because they live all the way in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I live all the way in Texas. So, we really stopped seeing each other. Have I visited recently? No, I have not, because God haven't called me to. But what I'm mostly saying is that, that is the length of how I didn't see my family. And here's the reason why I didn't see my family. And here's the reason why I had to let go of my family. I really didn't fight God. It'd be times where my heart would go softened, of course, because we would see people on holidays, we would see them on Thanksgivings and things like that. But I had to surrender that emotion and not beg God to push me there, because I wasn't ready to be there. Like, yeah, it might sound crazy, like God will take you away from your family. He will take you away from your family if it is not good for you. If it is not good for your spirit, His Holy Spirit living inside you, He will take you away from them. And that is kind of the scenario I'm in right now. And it's not like God had to force me. From the bottom of my heart, truthfully, I wanted to get away, because my family triggered a lot of things in me. My family triggered a lot of my mental health. My family triggered a lot of my low self-esteem. My family generational curse, their demons, triggered me a lot when I came around them. Being around my family opened a lot of wounds in me, a lot of trauma, a lot of past wounds. So if I constantly kept going back and forth, and at the moment the wounds wasn't healed, so it was just like reopening a sore every time I went back around them, every time I talked to them, every time I was around them. So I got to a point where I just stopped being around them until those wounds will completely heal. So if they do something crazy again, I would just forgive and move on. But the fact that my wounds were still open from trauma, low self-esteem, my mental health and things like that, I just truly stopped coming around. And another reason for me is that I depended on my family a lot, I can say, which a lot of us do, is depend on our families for small things. And if you need this here, if you need that here, I depended on them a lot. And it came to a point where God was like, I need you to depend on me. I need you to trust in me and not always trust in your family. And that's where I got to a point where I had to really just, let it go and trust in God, and not always call my mom for this or my grandma for this. I had to learn how to pray for it so God can give it to me and not my family. Because one thing I'm pretty sure everybody can testify to this is how family can bash you or want you to submit to them if you do something for them. So say you need a pack of diapers and you call your mom for it and she give you the diapers, but it gets to a point where she always complaining about the money back, or she always complaining that you don't do this and you don't do that. So it comes to a point where you stop asking her. And I got to that point in my life, but that's different from God. Is not going to complain when he gives you things, because as him being a father to us, that's what he's supposed to do. So that was one way how I surrendered my family, how I surrender by leaving my family, by going to a whole different state and city, by leaving them and not really being around, because it was some things that had to be worked on me. And they were the very thing that could be holding me, that was holding me back from allowing God to really work on me. And sometimes family can get in the way of God's process. Sometimes family can get in your ear and disrupt what God is telling you to do or say or get involved with. Sometimes the family is the very thing that could get in the way of your process of gaining closer to Christ. So sometimes that's why he takes us away, because he wants us to hear his voice only and not this voice, that voice. We already got enough voices going in our head with demon, flesh, and then God. And then if you add on your family and your friends, you don't know who to listen to at that point. Do this and do that. Well, God told me to step out, but your family saying that's crazy. Why would you do that? Well, how you gonna do this and that? But God is saying, trust in me. So you're in a season of like, I don't know what to do. And that is why I believe he take us away from the family, because for the purpose and the life that he wants us to have as his children, the only voice we should be obeying to and listening to is his voice and not the people of the world. And truthfully, God took away a lot of his people, a lot of people that he was going to use for a purpose away from their family. A lot of them. Moses, David, Jesus, Joseph, he took them away from the hometowns, away from their families, and he worked on them for the purpose that he had for them. And you know, that is similar to what we live as Christians, is sometimes he's going to take you away. And that is something I had to let go to gain closer to God, which was my family. So 2 is emotions. The heart says that the heart is deceitful, and the heart is very deceitful because it's flesh and spirit that's constantly fighting against each other. And that's why God says don't lean on your own emotions, because the emotions come from the heart. Your heart can be very deceitful because you can feel this emotion at this time, then this, then that. That's why some people are called bipolar, because they have so many different emotions. And let's be honest, we all are bipolar as humans, because we somehow have all different type of emotions flowing through our bodies in that specific moment. You could be happy in that moment, but you just got offended by what somebody said. Your emotion shifted just like that. And that was me. And my emotions was always leading me to do crazy things to myself and to the people around me. And the emotions I'm specifically talking about is the emotions of the flesh. And I call them emotions demonic, because the emotions of the flesh is evil. It's after yourself. It's your own desires. It's your own way. Instead of doing the way that God have called it, you want to do things out of pride and jealousy and success and all these dark things. That is why it's bad to operate out of a certain emotion, because that very emotion can be the thing that's allowing you to hurt people around you, allowing you to blaspheme from God, allowing you to fall into sin and temptation based off that emotion you felt in that moment. You know, the Bible also says don't let anger control you. And anger is an emotion. And it also says don't let the sun go down while you're still in anger, and don't sin while you're in anger. I have learned over the years that it's okay to get an emotion, but it's not okay to sin in that emotion. And that was something I was constantly doing in an emotion. I was sin in that emotion. Instead of surrendering that emotion to God, I will stay in that emotion and I will sin in that emotion. So here's my example, right? I deal with the emotion of irritation. Sometimes I can get highly irritated. And if I sit in that irritation, I will react out of that irritation. And when you are irritated, at least for me, I have testified for that, is that irritation comes with a hatred and a large anger. You get irritated, now you're frustrated, irritated, you're yelling, you're aggressive, you're hostile. And now you're operating out of that emotion based off that certain action that happened at that certain moment. And if you don't surrender that, and if I didn't surrender that, I would be reacting out of that. And that very thing is what caused me to sin against God, by hating my husband, by hating my children, by hating where I live, by hating the season I'm in, by being irritated and angry and frustrated. And it caused with this lost fire in me. And it caused me to blaspheme for God, to want to even, do sinful actions, the thoughts that comes with this anger and aggression. And that is what I mean by I have to surrender my emotion, because if I let that emotion follow me and if I feed that emotion, if I stay in that emotion, I am going to sin against God. And I wonder why that night I'm repenting, because I didn't surrender my emotion to Him. Irritation, frustration, masculine for aggression, that is not of God. That is of flesh. Them type of emotions flood around in flesh. The emotions that God wants us to have, I believe, is the emotions that's by the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, happiness, faithfulness, goodness, patience. Them the type of emotions He wants us to operate out of. But sometimes the things that goes around in the world, we can catch that emotion by that offense, that aggression, and we can react out of that emotion, and that can be the very emotion that will cause us to sin against our Father. And Galatians 5:17 explains that. I'm gonna make sure you go do your own Bible study to check it out. But what God had to show me, what He has to constantly keep showing me, because sometimes my emotions can take the best of me, is that I had to learn how to surrender my emotion to Him. I had to learn how to pray to Him when I'm catching that emotion. So recently I have catched the spirit of offense against my husband, and he could have said something and it seemed like it offended me out of my ears. And I had to repent against that emotion, because if I feed that emotion of offense, then me and my husband are hostile. Me and him we're fighting, we're irritated. I don't want to be near him. I'm aggressive. I don't want him to touch me. I don't want him to be near me, because out of any emotion I'm operating out of because of that offense that I have caught. So what I have to do is surrender that emotion. I have to go to my husband and we have to sit in prayer and we have to talk about what offended me. Because sometimes the offense that I caught could have been misunderstood in my own way. It could have been in a place of not understanding what he was saying or doing. And I had to surrender that emotion and leave it at God's feet and allow my brain to process that it's okay. You have to still show love. You have to still do this. But if you operate out of this offense, it's going to cause a spirit of division to come right in. Sometimes my emotions was the open door to the enemy. So if I get depressed, open door to darkness. If I have fear, open door to darkness. If I'm cussing and clowning, if I'm being disrespectful, if I'm not doing what God have called me to do as a wife, a mother, and a daughter of His, it can be the open door to darkness. And sometimes our emotions can be the open door. Sometimes it's not always us opening the door with our words. It's us opening the doors to the enemy of how we feel in our heart. And understand, this is a working process. This is not something I had to learn overnight. This was a process. I'm still on that process, because I still have to learn how to surrender my emotion every day, because you never know what the day is, and that day can be tough for you. But if you don't surrender that emotion, you will operate out of that emotion. And I was operating out of the emotions. So I had to let God lead my emotions and not allow flesh to lead my emotions. Because if I let flesh lead my emotions, my own flesh is going to create something very dark and selfish, bitter, irritated, aggressive, manly, and that's not of God. That is of flesh. And I had to learn how to tell God, I am emotional, I'm sad, I'm depressed, why am my life this way, why I can't do this? And He will speak to me or speak to my husband and let me know why. And I thank God that He allow us to cast our worries on Him, because He cares about us, like the Bible says. And that's where I had to learn, is to cast my emotions at His feet, to surrender how I feel at that moment. Surrender what's going on. I've been reading Psalms recently, and I realized that David really released a lot of his emotions to God. He released how he felt about his enemies, how he felt about himself. He really released his heart to God. David really released his heart to God. And that's something I'm trying to gain as a characteristic of myself, is to really release every emotional thing that is not of God, but I catch of this world, and leave it at His feet. You can get fear, you can get jealousy, you can get doubt, you can get anxious, you can get all those type of emotions. And God say, don't be anxious for anything, but pray about everything. So I had to learn how to pray about every emotion that I have, because if I feed that emotion, That's my open door to the demonic things that I was delivered from. And you know, demons are waiting at the door every time. Number 3 is finances. I had to surrender my finances to God. I probably haven't had a job about 5 years now. When I met my husband, I did have one, but I ended up quitting because I got pregnant. But ever since then, I really haven't had a job. And if I did get a job, it would be short. Like I did get like this CNA job before, and I only had it for 3 months, and then I had to let it go. So finances was one of those things I had to surrender to God. I couldn't do my own efforts. I couldn't work on my own until God was ready for me to do so. And finances could be one of those things that was the hardest for me, at least, to let go, because sometimes we want to be independent. Sometimes we want to be making our own money. Sometimes we want to be doing our own thing. But God is like, no, I don't want you to do that, because I want you to understand everything that you get is from me and not from this world. Because sometimes when we get that job or that financial, whatever God is using or He allowed you to get, we depend more on that resource instead of depending on God to be our resource. And I watched a video recently of Tony Evans as he was explaining that God uses multiple resources, but something we must understand as His children is that He is the main resource, not the resource that's giving you the finances, but me, because I allowed that to happen for you. And sometimes when I would get that job, I would try to become very independent. I would try to leave my husband. I would try to take my children away. I feel like I can do this on my own. I become very independent when I got a job. So God was like, I'm taking away this job because this is not where I want you to be. I want your finances to be in me. I want that independency to be gone because you're not independent. You are my child. You are my daughter. So everything you receive will be from me and not the things of this world. And that was hard to kind of swallow down. But I totally understood why, because all God is trying to do is be the Father that He is. All He's trying to do is show us the love and goodness and glorify through our lives by providing through every resource that He wants to. And that's something I had to choke down. And really, it's not really about the job. It's really about the finances. So when it comes to diapers, wipes, food, rent, whatever it is that needs to be financially taken care of, it had to be provided by God. And yes, He can use any resource He want to use, the city, YouTube, whatever resource, that job, but understanding that the only reason why you have this resource is because I have given it to you. So don't think this job is the only thing you're going to have. Understand that I'm the reason why you got this job. I'm the reason why you have these things. And, you know, that's just what it is as a father. Because if you think about a child, they depend on their parents for everything, to eat, clothes, bath. You know, whatever the child needs, the parents provide for it. And that's how God is. And that's what He wants to be, that Father in their life that is providing through everything that He wants to provide through. And He wants us to depend on Him and not depend on the resource. So number 4 is patterns and cycles, which is the same thing. I just put them both in there. I had to let go of my bad patterns and cycles. As being delivered from demons, I have learned that demons love patterns. They love cycles. They love when you constantly keep doing the repeated thing, because that can be their very open door if you're going to do the habits they have given you. I had to stop doing what I was used to doing. That's why the Bible in Romans 12:2 says to renew your mind. Because when you renew your mind and God begins to show you new cycles and new patterns. He begins to show you new ways of living. That's why I said renew your mind to know that God's will is good and pleasing to you. And in a lot of ways, God takes out the old patterns that we know, and He gives us new patterns by living by the Spirit. It was this cycle I was living. Every summer, I will repeat the same cycle. And it's because I have a demon living in me every summer. He will come into my mind and come and live there for a while. Check this theory out if you want to learn more. And I will be depressed. I will be sad. I will have bad hygiene. I will just really stop caring for myself based off what this demon was doing to me mentally. And it was this one summer where God delivered me from this demon. He took this demon away, but somehow he gained access again because I was still doing the patterns. I was still doing the bad cycles that he gave me. And God was like, she must stop following into that pattern. She must stop doing that bad habit, because that is the very open door that's allowing him in because of the pattern that you are doing, because the action that you are doing in that moment. So I had to learn every summer, because it was a pattern in my life. And I've learned that us as humans, when we catch a pattern, we will constantly keep doing it. And I had to learn how to stop being sad, depressed, and I had to get up and learn how to take care of myself every summer. If you look at what today is, July, I don't know, but July something. It's the summer. And I had to learn how to continue to break that cycle. But if I kept feeding that pattern, that bad habit, that was his open door every time I did it. So I had to break that cycle. All I wanted to do in the summertime was sleep, eat, and watch TV all day, which satisfied my flesh. And I understood why I was always sad and depressed, because that was the time he came in and tried to take over my body. But God had to help me break those cycles. So the last part of this video, which is 5, I don't know if I'm gonna make another one, I might. So make sure you stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, and turn that notification on for the next video. Number 5 is meat. I don't think I talked about this one. I think I talked about more about sugar in the other video. Me and my husband do not eat meat anymore. We had to stop eating meat. God pulled us away from meat. Maybe about a year ago, I can say he pulled us away from meat. And when I say every inch of meat, chicken nuggets, whatever meat you can call, I can't think of it right now, but meat in general. And you know, our kids still eat meat like every now and then. They actually eat meat, yeah, every now and then. Until God called them out, you know, we allow them to eat a little meat here. And you know, this meat was very bad for us. What this meat was really doing was satisfying our flesh. When you eat meat, sometimes I think about a Thanksgiving plate, and you have the turkey, the ham, the chicken wings, the chicken thighs. You got all that on your plate, and you eat all that food, and you pat your belly and be like, that was amazing. That is a satisfying flesh you have over you. And now you can go to sleep. Now you can sit there and chill. And that is what meat was doing to me and my husband. It was satisfying our flesh on a daily. And sometimes you can eat meat twice a day if you want to. And that meat was satisfying our flesh to the point where we couldn't even hear God. That's why God said go on a fast, because what the fast to do is quiet the flesh and rise the spirit. And you, on a fast, you stop doing certain things that you love. And one of those things that me and my husband loved was meat. But it became to the point where God is like, you guys must stop eating meat, because that is the very thing. That is why your flesh is rising and you can't hear me, because you hear more flesh than you hear more spirit. And that is why we had to stop eating meat. And we tested God all the time. We came back to the hotel, we started eating meat again, and my husband got so sick. He got anxiety. His heart felt like it was starting to stop. He just felt very bad. And I know one thing about my husband, he learned that when God is pulling his anxiety, that means he wants him closer or he's doing something wrong. And what we was doing wrong in that season was eating meat. Just because I told y'all to go back to a hotel, don't mean y'all eat meat again, because we felt like that. We back in the hotel, we really can't eat what we want to eat and eat healthy. God said, y'all better figure something out. So we figured something out. We stopped eating meat, and you know, it was helping us with our health, you know. And eating meat was actually the best thing that God could have took away from us, because it actually is way better. You don't get gassy, you don't feel all these, because meat gave us gas based off the grease that we was using. And you know, and it was bad for us because it just wasn't satisfying the spirit. It was really satisfying the flesh on a daily. And it was just pulling us away from God, and we had to surrender eating meat. Yes, we love meat, but we love the spirit. But as I end this video, I just want to end this video with just showing you guys there will be a lot of things you will have to surrender when you want God to be closer in your life. There will be a lot of things you'll have to let go. One of the Bible scriptures, I'm gonna put it on the screen, it explains that Die to yourself daily. Pick up your cross and die to yourself daily and follow me. And Jesus was telling people that. And what he was saying was that die to your flesh daily. He didn't put it in that way. But when you die to yourself, that means you die to your desires. You die to what you want. You die to the things that you crave. And you do what the Spirit is telling you to do. And that's why in these videos, you probably be like, dang, she can't do nothing. You're right, I can't. Because those are the very things that was pulling me away from God. Those are the very things that was satisfying my flesh instead of satisfying the Spirit, the Holy Spirit they have given us. And it was the very things that was keeping me in bondage, and the enemy had access and open doors because of those things that I was allowing to do. And that is why he was in and out of my life, because I kept doing those certain things. And that's why God said stopped. And once he said stop, my life is becoming more pure and holy like he is as his children. He wants us to be pure and holy, but it's things that we're going to have to give up to be pure and holy. There's things we're going to have to sacrifice to become that righteous person that he have called us to come. And yes, it's not easy. You will get tempted every day because you have to choose who you want to follow today. And it would be times where it's like, I want to follow the flesh today because the flesh is flesh. The flesh feel good. Let's be honest. Let's not sugarcoat. The flesh feel good, but the flesh is demonic. It's dark. It's selfish. And it's against God. It's hostile against God. And I had to learn how to say no to flesh and yes to Spirit.